My grandmother turned 82 on a Thursday in April. We celebrated the way we always celebrated her birthdays. At her house, the one she had lived in for 41 years, with the particular warmth of a family that has gathered in the same rooms for long enough that the rooms themselves feel like part of the celebration. My Aunt Carol had organized it, as she organized most things involving my grandmother. The cake, the guest list, the flowers on the table that my grandmother always said were unnecessary and always appreciated. It was a good afternoon. My grandmother was sharp and funny and present in the way she had always been, which I mention because it matters. She was not confused, she was not diminished, she was entirely herself, which made what she said to me at the end of the afternoon more significant, not less. She waited until most of the guests had left. She found me in the kitchen where I was washing cups the way I always do at her house because it gives me something useful to do and she has always appreciated useful. She put her hand on my arm. She said quietly that she wanted me to check something for her. She said she wanted me to look in the safe. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you are listening from. My name is Julia Marsh. I am 30 years old. And what I found in my grandmother's safe that Thursday afternoon, and what it told me about the 3 years my Aunt Carol had spent managing my grandmother's affairs with the particular confidence of someone who believed they were operating without oversight, changed everything my family thought they knew about what had been happening. My grandmother's jewelry was not a small collection. I want to say this clearly because the word jewelry can suggest something modest. A few pieces worn occasionally, sentimental rather than valuable. My grandmother's collection was both sentimental and valuable, built over 60 years of a life that had included a husband who expressed love through specific considered gifts and a personal history that had intersected at various points, with objects that had become worth considerably more than the moments that had produced them. She had shown me the collection once when I was 17. We had sat on her bed on a Sunday afternoon and she had opened the safe and taken out each piece, telling me the story attached to it, who had given it to her, when, what the occasion had been. The pearl necklace from her wedding. The emerald ring her husband had bought in Italy the year before he passed. A brooch her mother had left her. Several pieces she had bought herself in her 40s, when she had started earning her own money and had decided that buying herself beautiful things was not an indulgence but a record of her own life. She had told me that Sunday afternoon when I was 17, that she intended for the collection to stay in the family. She had said she had thought carefully about who should receive what and that she had written her wishes down. I had not thought about that conversation again for 13 years. Until the Thursday of her birthday when she put her hand on my arm in the kitchen. The safe was in her bedroom closet. I had seen it many times. The same small gray box, the same combination lock, the same shelf it had occupied since before I was born. My grandmother stood in the doorway while I opened it, watching with the calm of someone who has already prepared for what they are about to see. The safe was not empty. There were documents, insurance papers, her will, the deed to the house. There was some cash folded neatly in an envelope. There was one piece of jewelry. A simple gold chain. Pretty, modest, not among the pieces I remembered from the Sunday afternoon when I was 17. My grandmother looked at the safe for a moment. Then she said, "I thought so." She sat down on the edge of the bed. She was not distressed. She was the particular calm of someone whose suspicion has been confirmed and who has already decided what they are going to do about it. She told me that 6 months earlier she had asked Carol to bring the jewelry from the bank's safe deposit box, where several pieces had been stored for security, to her home safe, because she had wanted to see them and because she was 81 and did not want to make the trip to the bank. Carol had said she would handle it. The pieces had never arrived at the house. She had asked twice more. Carol had said the transfer was being arranged. She had not asked again, she said, because she had not wanted to seem suspicious. But she had noticed. She had counted what was left in the home safe. She had thought about what should have been transferred. And on her 82nd birthday, with the quiet certainty of a woman who had spent 8 decades being underestimated and had learned to keep that to herself until the moment it was useful, she had asked me to check. I asked her if she knew what had happened to the pieces. She said she suspected. He said she wanted to know for certain. I said I would find out. My attorney's name was Rachel Moore. I had used her twice before for unrelated matters and had found her thorough and direct in the specific way that matters when you are dealing with something you would rather not be dealing with. I called her the following morning. I told her what my grandmother had described. The safe deposit box, the transfer that had not happened, the missing pieces. I asked what our options were for establishing what had happened to the jewelry. Rachel asked 3 questions. Then she said we needed to establish 2 things. The contents of the safe deposit box at the time Carol was given authority to transfer the items, and the current contents of that box. She said a formal request to the bank, supported by my grandmother's written authorization, would produce the account records, including access logs showing who had entered the box and when. My grandmother wrote the authorization that afternoon. Her handwriting was clear and steady and looked exactly like her signature had looked for 40 years. The bank records arrived 8 days later. Carol had accessed the safe deposit box 4 times in the previous 18 months. The first access, 14 months before my grandmother's birthday, had been accompanied by a box opening that lasted 47 minutes. The second, third, and fourth accesses had each been shorter. The box's current contents, as documented by the bank at my grandmother's request, were a small folder of documents and 3 pieces of jewelry, none of which were among the significant pieces I remembered from the Sunday afternoon when I was 17. I hired a jewelry appraiser my grandmother had used before. A woman named Margaret who had appraised the collection once years ago and who still had her records. Margaret confirmed from her documentation what pieces had existed. Rachel confirmed from the bank records what pieces had been present at the time Carol was given access. The gap between the 2 lists was 17 pieces. Rachel sent Carol a formal letter on a Tuesday morning, certified return receipt. It outlined the bank records, the access log, the appraiser's documentation, and the discrepancy between the collection as it had existed and the collection as it currently existed. It requested a written explanation within 14 days and documentation of any transactions involving the missing pieces. Carol called my grandmother 2 days after the letter arrived. I was there. I had been spending more time at my grandmother's house since the birthday, partly to help, partly because she had asked me to be present for any conversations about this, and partly because she is 82 and I have learned not to take the afternoons we have for granted. Carol began with family. She said this was not the way family handled things. She said she had been managing my grandmother's affairs for years and deserved some trust. She said the jewelry was being kept safe. My grandmother said very calmly, "Carol, where are the pieces?" A long pause. Carol said she had sold several pieces. She said she had needed the money. She said she had intended to replace them or compensate the estate. My grandmother said, "They were mine to give, not yours to sell." The process that followed took 4 months. Rachel was methodical and patient. Carol produced records of 7 of the 17 sales, auction house receipts dated with values. The remaining 10 pieces were unaccounted for by documentation, though Carol provided a written statement describing them. The total value of the documented sales was $43,000. The estimated value of the undocumented pieces, based on Margaret's appraisal records, added an additional $28,000 in estimated losses. Carol agreed through her attorney to a structured repayment, a combination of cash and property that Rachel assessed as fair given the circumstances and the documentation available. My grandmother updated her will. Carol was not removed entirely. My grandmother said that was not what she wanted, that Carol was her daughter and that the relationship was more than this, however much this had damaged it. What changed was the structure of the estate management going forward, which was placed with an independent executor rather than a family member. My grandmother said the evening after the settlement was signed, that she was glad she had asked me to check the safe. I said I was glad she had trusted me to. She said trust was something you gave carefully and revised honestly, which she had been doing for 82 years and intended to continue. I wrote that down when I got home. I have thought about it many times since,